Welcome dear students. This is the fourth video on practical problem for accounts of not-for-profit concerns. Today we will be solving sum number 12 on page number 122 of your government textbook. So let's begin reading sum number 12. Following is the receipts payments account of Dhananjay Library, Mumbai for the year ending 31st March 2020. Receipts and payments account for the year ending on 31st March 2020. Before we begin reading our receipts and the payment side, let us recall on the receipt side we have income, so I, liability L, and there could be a sale of asset. On the payment side, expenses E, and for asset A. Let's begin reading on the receipt side. To balance brought down is my opening cash balance, which I will not consider. To admission fees is an income. To subscription, income. To lecture hall hire charges, income. To miscellaneous income, income. To interest on investment, income. With this we have completed identification on the receipt side. We will now begin on the payment side. Salary, expense. Rent, expense. Investments, assets. Stationery, expense. Electricity charges, expense. Books, asset. Outstanding expenses, but this is for the year 2018 and 19, and our year is ending on 31st March 2020, which means this is my previous year expenses which I have already paid. So I will have no entry for this. Balance carried down is my closing cash balance, which will be written on the asset side. With this, we have completed step number 1, identification. You are required to prepare an income and expenditure account for the year ended on 31st March 2020 and balance sheet as on that date. The following information is also made available to you. This is my adjustments. So we will now begin reading our adjustments and marking star in our receipts and payments. Let's begin with the first adjustment. On 31st March 2019, our year is ending on 31st March 2020, which means this is my opening balance which is given to me. Students, as mentioned to you earlier, opening balances of the assets will be having only one effect. So this will have only one effect. Let's read it. The library had the following assets also. Books at rupees 50,000. So we'll have to check if we have books on the payment side. So on the payment side, I have books. Yes, so I will mark a star. Next is furniture rupees 6,500. I will look on my payment side. I do not have furniture, so I will not mark a star. And machinery of rupees 30,000. So I will have to look on my payment side, check if I have machinery. No, which means I will not mark a star. We move to adjustment number 2. Subscription received in advance amounted to rupees 500. Subscription. So I will mark star for subscription. So on the receipt side, I have subscription. I will mark a star. Adjustment number 3. Outstanding salaries rupees 1,300 and for rent rupees 950. So I have to mark star for salaries and for rent. So on the payment side, I have salaries and rent. So I'll mark a star. Adjustment number 4. 50% of the admission fees should be capitalized. Admission fees should be capitalized. So I have to mark star for admission fees. So on the receipt side, I'll mark star for admission fees. Adjustment number 5. Furniture to be depreciated at 10% per annum. They have asked us to depreciate furniture. Students, we have already seen the payment side. We don't have furniture on the payment side. So I will mark star in the opening assets which is given to me. So for furniture, I'll mark a star. Library books were purchased on 1st of April and charged depreciation at 10%. They have given us an information that the library books were purchased on 1st of April. Now this date is very important when we are calculating depreciation. So I have to mark star for books. So for books, I'll mark a star which is for depreciation, and I'll make a note of the date. It is purchased on 1st of April 19. Adjustment number 7. The investments were purchased on 1st April 2019 and they carry interest at 20% per annum. So we have to calculate interest on investment. So I'll mark star for investment and interest. So we will have to see if we have investment and interest on investment. So on the payment side, I have investments. I will mark a star. On the receipt side, if you see, we have interest on investment. So I will mark a star even for that. And they have given us information that this investment was purchased at the beginning of the year. So this will be useful for calculation of interest. So I'll make a note of the date. With this, students, we have completed reading our adjustments and marking star in our receipts and payments. We are now ready to begin with step number 3, that is writing in the inner column and the outer column. Please make a note, students. The ones which are marked star will be written in the inner column and the ones without star will be written in the outer column. So let's begin from the receipt side. The first one is to balance brought down. This is my opening cash balance. Since we are doing this at the end of the year, opening balances will not be recorded. Next is admission fees. So on the income side, I will write by admission fees. There is a star. So I will write it in the inner column 4,500. Next is subscriptions. Again on the income side, I'll write by subscriptions. There is a star. So I'll write it in the inner column 20,000. Next is lecture hall hire charges. Again on the income side, I'll write by lecture hall hire charges. There is no star, so I'll write it in the outer column 4,200. Next is miscellaneous income. Again on the income side, I'll write by miscellaneous income. Since there is no star, I'll write it in the outer column 250. Next is interest on investment. Again on the income side, I'll write by interest on investment. Since there is a star, I'll mark a star and write it in the inner column 900. With this, students, we have completed our receipt side. We will now begin from the payment side. We have salaries. So on the expenditure side, I'll write 2 salaries. There is a star. So I'll write it in the inner column 9,000. Next is rent. Again on the expenditure side, I'll write 2 rent. There is a star. I'll write it in the inner column 7,500. Next is investments. On the asset side, I will write investments. Since there is a star and date also is given, so we will mention the date. So while calculating our interest, it becomes easy for us. We'll mark a star and write it in the inner column 6,000. Next is stationery. So on the expense side, I'll write to stationery. Since there is no star, I'll write the amount in the outer column 1,350. Next is electricity charges. Again on the expense side. So I'll write to electricity charges. No star. Outer column 850. Next is books. We will write it on the asset side. So I'll write books. There is a date given, so I'll mention the date. It becomes easy to calculate the depreciation. And there are 2 stars. So after each star, I'll leave a line. I'll mark 2 stars and write the amount in the inner column 5,000. Next is outstanding expenses. I told you student, this is an expense of my previous year which is already been paid. So I will not have any entry for this. Next is balance carried down is nothing but my closing cash balance, which will be written on the asset side. So I'll write closing cash balance. In the outer column 4,650. With this students, we have completed step number 3, writing in the inner and the outer column. We'll now begin with step number 4, reading of adjustments. Adjustment number 1. On 31st March 2019, the library had the following assets also. Books at rupees 50,000, furniture rupees 6,500 and machinery of rupees 30,000. This is opening assets. So the opening assets always have only one effect. So let's do the effect. Books at rupees 50,000 on the asset side. I will write add opening books rupees 50,000. I will add it. 5,000 plus 50,000 will be 55,000. I'll still write it in the inner column because there is one more star. Next is furniture rupees 6,500. So again on the asset side I will write furniture. There is a star. So I'll write it in the inner column 6,500. Next is machinery rupees 30,000. Again on my asset side I'll write machinery. There is no star. Outer column 30,000. Adjustment number 2. Subscription received in advance amounted to rupees 500. Subscription is received in advance, which means it's a pre-received income. So let's do the first effect for pre-received income. So on the income side, I have subscription. I'll say less pre-received, which is for my next year. So the amount is rupees 500. So 20,000 minus 500 will give me 19,500 in the outer column. This is my first effect for pre-received income. My second effect will be on the liability side because it is an income which is received in advance. So first I'll leave around 3 to 4 lines students, and then I will write subscription received in advance. In the outer column 500. Adjustment number 3. Outstanding salaries rupees 1,300 and for rent rupees 950. We will first do outstanding salaries. So in my salaries, I'll say add outstanding 1,300. 9,000 plus 1,300 will give me 10,300. This is my first effect for outstanding salaries. My second effect for outstanding salary will be on the liability side. So on the liability side, I'll write outstanding salaries. In the outer column, 1,300. Next is outstanding rent rupees 950. So on the expenditure side, I'll say rent, add outstanding 950. So 7,500 plus 950 will give me 8,450. This is my first effect for outstanding rent. My second effect will be on the liability side. I will write outstanding rent, since it's an expense, 950 in the outer column. Adjustment number 4, 50% of the admission fees should be capitalized. So we have to capitalize the admission fees. Let's do the first effect. So on the income side, I will say less 50% capitalize. 4,500 50% will give me 2,250. So 4,500 minus 2,250 will be 2,250 in the outer column. This is my first effect. My second effect will be on the liability side, but first I will have to write capital. And now I have to capitalize the admission fees. So I will say add admission fees. 2,250, we will write it in the inner column. Adjustment number 5, furniture to be depreciated at 10% per annum. Let's do depreciation on furniture. So on the asset side, I have furniture. I'll say less dep at the rate of 10%. 6,500, 10% will be 650. So 6,500 minus 650 will give me 5,850. This is my first effect for depreciation on furniture. My second effect will be on the expenditure side, since depreciation is an expense for the business. So I'll write to dep on furniture. In the outer column, 650. Adjustment number 6. Library books were purchased on 1st April 2019. Charge depreciation at 10% per annum. We need to charge depreciation on library books. Date is also mentioned. So let's do the first effect. So on the asset side, I have books. I have to charge depreciation. So I'll say less dep at the rate of 10%. Now opening books, which means I will have to charge depreciation for full year. The books were also purchased on 1st April, which means depreciation will again be charged for full year. So I can directly calculate my depreciation. 55,000, 10% for full year will be 5,500. So 55,000 minus 5,500 will be 49,500. This is my first effect for depreciation on books. My second effect for depreciation on books will be on the expenditure side. So on the expenditure side, I'll write to dep on books. In the outer column, 5,500. Adjustment number 7. The investments were purchased on 1st April 2019 and they carry interest at 20% per annum. So we have to calculate interest on investment. So on the asset side, the amount for investment which is given is 6,000 rupees and it is purchased on 1st April 19. So first let us do the calculation. So for calculation of interest on investment, you require 3 things: amount, percentage and date. The amount for investment was rupees 6,000. They have asked us to calculate at 20%. So 20 upon 100. An investment was purchased in the month of April, which means full year. So I'll write 12 upon 12. I can now do my calculation. 12 and 12 cancel. 0 and 0, 0 and 0. 600 into 2 will give me 1200. So this is my interest on investment. So my first effect will be on the income side, since interest on investment is an income. So if you see on the income side, we already have interest on investment and we have already received 900 rupees. But we were supposed to receive 1200, which means the amount of interest on investment is outstanding. So I will write 1200 in the outer column. So I will have add outstanding. I have an outstanding of 300 rupees. Now how did I get this 300? 1200 minus 900 will give me 300 rupees. So 300 rupees is an outstanding interest on investment. This is my first effect. My second effect will be on the asset side. I will write add interest on investment, which is outstanding 300 rupees. So 6000 plus 300 will give me 6300 in the outer column. With this, students, we have completed our adjustments and step number 4. We'll now begin with the last step, that is step number 5, closing the books of accounts. First, we will calculate our expenditure amount. So we will total the expenditure amount. When we total the expenditure side, I get a total of 27,100. Now I will total the income side. When I total the income side, I get a total of 27,400. We will now use the ledger format. We will double underline on both the side. Bigger total to be written on both the sides. So 27,400 will be written on both the sides. From the bigger total, I will minus the smaller total. So 27,400 minus 27,100. I'll get a balance of 300, which I will write it on top. Now my income is more than my expense. When my income is more than my expense, which means the concern has made a surplus. So I will write down to surplus carried down. In the bracket, I will write excess of income over expenditure. Now, since my concern has got a surplus, on the liability side, my capital, I will say add surplus of rupees 300. Now, students, I will not be able to tally the sum because capital amount is not given. So, I need to calculate the capital. So, let's do the calculation for capital. So my formula to calculate capital is opening assets minus opening liabilities. So let us find out our opening assets and opening liabilities from the question. So if you see on the receipt side, to balance brought down is my opening cash balance. So this will come under my asset, opening cash balance, 5,000. On the payment side, there is an outstanding expenses of the previous year, which means this is my opening liability. So I'll say less outstanding expense of rupees 500. Then in the information that is provided to us, they have given us opening assets. So let us write down the opening assets. Books 50,000. Furniture 6,500 and machinery 30,000. So we now have our opening assets and our opening liabilities. Let's do the calculation. 50,000 plus 5,000 plus 6,500 plus 30,000 will give me 91,500 minus opening liability is 500, which means my capital amount is 91,000. This is how you calculate your capital. So now students, I can write the capital amount here, 91,000, and with this I can total 91,000 plus 2,250 plus 300. I get a total of 93,550. I will now total the liability side. When I total the liability side, I get the total 96,300. Now I will also total the asset side. When I total the asset side, I get the same total as my liability, that is 96,300. With this students, we have tallied our sum number 12, and I hope you have understood the sum.